Fellow viewer, and welcome back to a new episode of Hammer D20, the show that hits hard and eats lard. Because, as you know, any show about nerd culture surely should know a little bit about healthy eating habits. And talking about healthy eating habits and whether we should be eating healthier, I just want to wish you all a happy new year. Hope you all have a good 2023. After the stinker that was 2022 for myself, I really go for anything else. I guess as a formality, I should say, my name is Steven Sobot, and I will be your guide. Today, we're going to speak to two local business owners in Hamilton, that being Vince D'Agostino of Waypoint Games and Mo Storozinski of Moes Attic. I've spoken to Vince in the past a couple times about his board game cafe that he owns, Waypoint Games. Originally situated in Dundas and then Westdale Village, Waypoint Games was the place to go in the west end of Hamilton if you were down to play Magic the Gathering. He has since moved from his Westdale location to 1042 Garner Road West, up in Ancaster, to a much larger gaming storefront. So I spoke to him about his move, the new location, and what we hope to expect out of Waypoint Games in the near future. Steven, over to you.
So we were a board game cafe. We're more of a retail space now, like your local game store. We just opened up here in Ancaster now, literally 4 days ago. So yeah, that's what we are. Perfect. Sell miniatures, collectibles, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we ended up moving to Westdale right before the pandemic started. We were open for about 2 months, and then the pandemic happened. So we spent the entirety of the pandemic kind of hiding in a little office in the back of the building that we originally had open for business, and then kind of just bode our time for the right spot to come along, and this happened, and yeah, here we are now. Yeah, it's nice to be open again. We ended up moving into the back, and that was only 700 square feet, and here we're at 2,000, so it's a welcome change for sure. Yeah.
Right, and so this location is where were you located specifically? Just
here, this one, yeah. So it's 1042 Garner Road. So it's where Garner and Wilson meet. If you look at it on a map, at first glance, you're probably going to think like, why would they ever move there to the middle of nowhere? I don't understand. But then when you plug in how long it takes for you to get here, you'll probably understand why. We're real easy highway access from basically anywhere in Hamilton, Burlington, Brantford. Even if you go south towards the lake, like there's just tons of really easy access to this specific location, and then we got great parking and all that other fun stuff. It's really nice to be the first tenant in a new space. I mean, you get to kind of design it the way you want, and everything's fresh and new, and it's great. It's great. This has been a long time coming for us. You know, for those of you who played in Westdale during the pandemic, I'm sure it's going to be a welcome change for you guys too, in that we had, 4 little cramped tables in our space, and now we've got, the space up here is larger than our old store, and it's literally just for tournament play. We've got seating for about 60 people. We've got a lot of plans in the future to do some more involved tournament play stuff, because that's always what I've enjoyed. So yeah, it's really exciting. Furnishing an LGS is pretty straightforward, relatively speaking. Like, I did the restaurant thing, and that was way more involved. But it's still, like, because we're a new tenant, there were no floors, right? We had to get floors in, we had to do all the walls, and that adds up a lot for sure. And we also didn't really want to spare any expense when it came to the type of furniture we were buying. Like, part of our, core principles, if you want to call them that, is that we're trying to elevate the experience that you have in a store. It's not, the stores I grew up in, which were, kind of dingy, moldy basements, right? We're trying to refine that experience. So that was part of, expense-wise, it was a lot, but in terms of actual time and effort, not too crazy, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And we discussed earlier before that you were mentioning that the schedule you guys pretty much got a full schedule all week, kind of stuff happening.
Yeah, so we kind of wanted to just kind of get the familiarity back with our customer base that was used to the same schedule we had before. That being said, this is an entirely new location with entirely new needs, and we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? We're just trying to kind of get a feel for what you guys want and what the space is going to need in terms of different event types, different card games, different board games, all that kind of stuff. So that will evolve over time, but right now, we just kind of wanted to get people familiar with what we had before.
You guys, I guess, mostly focusing on Magic
for now. Yeah. So another big reason why we moved is, listen, I love Magic. Magic's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, but it's time to grow up a little bit and get some more product lines in our stores. So we got our contract with Games Workshop now. We're doing miniatures, we're doing Warhammer, all that fun stuff. We're trying to get into Pokemon now, more card games. We've taken out the food and drink just because for this location it didn't make sense, and there's going to be a ton of great restaurants in the plaza as well. So not really something we are considering initially, but definitely planning on replacing that with more retail product lines and just kind of seeing what people want, because this stuff changes a lot and you got to make sure you're keeping up with the times, So so one big thing that we've announced, hopefully by now, is we're doing our invitational series again. So for those of you who remember the Dundas days, the last year we had an invitational series where there was kind of an annual build-up of points you could accumulate in the tournaments, and that would end in a end-of-year big tournament with tons of prizes and a lot of really large incentives, I would say, for people to come play in our weekly tournaments. So we're bringing that back. That's our next big project. We've got some custom playmats being designed and other prizes and stuff like that, which I'm really excited about. Other than that, just getting more stuff in the store. We got to get more inventory. We got to get more events going for other board games, other miniatures, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's worth the trip just to see what it's like, and I'm sure you'll be satisfied for sure. It's taken a lot of time for us to get here, and I'm really excited to show it off. So yeah,
that's all for now. Back to you, Stephen. Before we move on to our next segment, let's take a short break. See you soon. Welcome back. So, as some of you know, I helped Cable 14 in their coverage of the Hamilton Comic-Con this year. While there, I met many exciting people and organizations involved in the nerd industry, from vendors to local artists to charitable communities and so on. One such vendor that I spoke to was Moes, the owner of Moes Attic, a traveling comic store that specializes in books from the golden, silver, bronze, and even platinum era of books. Just before we move on to the interview, I want to give just a quick lesson as to what that means when I say gold, silver, and bronze era in terms of comic books. Comic books are generally divided into different eras based on their style and other industry changes that influenced how they were made and distributed. The Platinum era effectively refers to the era before 1935, where comic books weren't particularly popular, and most mass-produced picture-based comics were compilations of newspaper strips. It wasn't until the 1930s when the first introduction of superheroes became the mainstay of comics, marking the beginning of the Golden Era. The most obvious comic that sparked this era was Action Comics, introducing the new superhero, Superman. Many of these comics focused on the hardships of people still recovering from the Great Depression, as well as the threat of the Axis forces and combating them. Probably one of the most representative heroes of this era was Captain America, proudly punching Hitler's face any chance he can. The Silver Era began in the 1950s, where concerned parents and members of society saw comics as a bad influence on the youth, instigating the creation of the Comics Codes Authority. Its intent was to prevent publishers from presenting explicit and mature topics in comics. This era also saw the introduction of famous comic book artists and writers, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, who created such mainstays as the Fantastic Four and the Amazing Spider-Man. The Bronze Era began in the 1970s and was defined by comics' shift of topics. As series became popular, characters went through character changes, focusing on darker elements of human nature like alcoholism, drug use, and environmental pollution. Some of the more popular Bronze Era comic characters that emerged were characters like Conan the Barbarian and John Carter, not to mention the character changes that happened, such as Spider-Man losing his girlfriend Gwen Stacy. Since the mid-80s, we've been in what would be called the modern era of comics, with deeper and more mature storylines, darker and edgier heroes, less centralized comic book distribution, such as places like Image Comics and Dark Horse getting a foothold in the industry, and postmodern takes and renditions of popular superheroes. One of the most popular modern comic books is Watchmen, which is a counterculture example of how the superheroes are. Not only that, but big world changes and multiverse theories became mainstay in popular Endurant franchises. The fact that Spider-Man is not only Peter Parker, but also Miles Morales, is just a defining trait of a lot of the signifiers of this era. Moe collects, appraises, and sells books from the older pre-80s eras, those being bronze, silver, and gold, appearing in conventions to sell his books and see what others bring to him. So I spoke to him about his experience, his love for comic books, and what else he has to offer in the near future. Stephen, over to you. Thank you, Stephen. Now, Moe, what is Moe's Attic, I guess?
Moe's Attic is a real fun place to be, Stephen. What it is it's I specialize in gold, silver, and Bronze Age comic books and related items. And the comics has always been my passion, and collecting, especially the hard to find kind of really weird, different sort of comics. Now, traditionally, I do all the superhero stuff, and you'll see in my inventory, but that's my specialty. And it's also branched out into things like old pulp magazines, big little books, art magazines, a little different kind of badges and rings and different things like that. But comic books is my specialty.
Yeah, and that was one thing, because we met at the Hamilton Comic Con, and the one thing definitely that set your stall aside was that most places or most comic book dealers sell comic books. They sell this, they sell that, they sell new, they sometimes sell 60s. But then you had the collection of, like, you said pulp magazines from like the 1800s or whatever, and it's just like that's great that you're into that as well. Like, it's something you don't see many people into.
The pulp culture population for, say, newer comics is great, and I appreciate all the recent artists and writers, creators, but the nostalgia is what grabs me, is what gets me. And the stuff that's really hard to find, I try to center my energies on that. And that's what my customer base is on, for the most part. Again, I do sell some of the other types of more popular comics that are older, but the ones that you made reference to, the pre-comic books, which I guess you can call the Platinum Age, and the pre-Platinum Age Victorian Age, which is almost impossible to find items from that era, and that sort of thing. That's what really generates me. Golden Age of comics, very, very popular, because people threw stuff out back then. Pulp paper, ephemera wasn't made to really last, and just to find things in existence sometimes in a certain condition is fantastic. And another thing too to keep in mind that people don't realize is that there was a lot of comics when they became really popular in the early 40s, and a lot of them were shipped overseas to the people that were fighting for us. And a lot of them got destroyed just from use, and it's for some to be existing in especially higher grade conditions is very rare. Even when you go into the 1960s, Stephen, when Spider-Man was created and the Stan Lee era sort of began with the superheroes, comics, there weren't like many people collecting for the sake of investing or anything like that. And just to find even things that pre-1970 and really high grade is sometimes a challenge, and it's a great challenge for me because it's on to the next thing, and it's always the thrill of the hunt.
Excellent. So and I know I mentioned earlier that I saw you at the Hamilton Comic Con. So you yourself, do you have a physical storefront, or are you a not per se a traveling salesman, but we're a traveling salesman?
No, I strictly do conventions. During the COVID, I don't want to say I was forced, but I kind of chose to start the online, which many people do, and I respect. And don't get me wrong, I totally respect that. But there's a difference. Even right now, I would really prefer our interview to be in person. Like, it's great that we're talking by camera, but there's nothing like something tangible in your hands when you have a collectible actually in your hand and you can actually see it and show people. And that's one of the reasons why. Although I have done stuff online, very minimal, I do prefer to travel and to go to shows where I can meet my customers and, you know, talk shop, and they bring me things in that they want opinions on, or and hopefully to sell. But no, but unusual items and that sort of thing, and it's really great, and it's that's what my enjoyment is as traveling.
And where did your interest kind of stem from?
Well, when I was young, my mother grew up in Western Canada, and she was one of the typical, you know, during the Depression, had to quit school early, that sort of thing. So when she wound up moving out here, and I was a late baby boomer, and it was all school with me, really heavy into. She really wanted me to advance and do the best I could. So at a very young age, when you're, you know, a little boy growing up in Hamilton, Ontario, what's really there to spark your interest? So when I showed an interest in comics, and my mother recognized the fact that, yeah, you know what, it could, you know, improve my reading and that sort of thing, she ran with the ball, and she promoted it for me and encouraged it, and that really mushroomed. From the beginning, I became a good reader as a result. Not to sound conceited or anything, I'm just saying, like, you know, it helped me in school, certainly reading. Yeah. But the excitement of collecting, and I used to collect everything, Stephen. Like, it wasn't just like I used to go to the local variety store, like a lot of us did, because there was no comic stores back then. We're talking late '60s.
Oh yeah.
And my very first comic book I ever bought, I'll remember, was Amazing Spider-Man number 68. Okay. And that was like a 12-cent issue, and I was hooked from then. And then when you used to go to these variety stores and you used to wait for the next issue, sometimes somebody beat you to it, and there wasn't like 10 copies on the shelf at that time. So then it got me hooked onto buying back issues and trying to fill in the stories. And then it went from there. Then I was an early comic investor, I guess you could say. I recognized the value of comics, even before getting into university. When I was in high school age, I recognized that, and I started, you know, putting comic books away for their value and condition and that sort of thing, and became a collector.
Sick.
Then it was time to go to school. And then I guess you could say I sold things that dreams were made of in order to help me through university. And then, you know, I still had the bug even during university days, but then, you know, you get your first good paying job, and what do you start doing? Well, of course, you start collecting comics again, but this time you have money. Yeah. And then to buy those back issues. And then I accumulated boxes and boxes of again. And then I met my wife, and then it was time to get married, and boxes had to go, and, you know, kind of went through the cycle a few times, and then wound up making I guess you could say, like a hobby / business out of it, and going from there. So
perfect. Yeah. The Moes Attica is in this current phase. How long has this been? How long have you been running this, like the convention circuit kind of store?
Well, a long time ago, without going into too many details, Stephen, I used to own actually a comic store once upon a time. And I went through that phase, but circumstances made it that I wound up getting forced out of that. Okay. And I was kind of out of it for a few years, and then I got back into it. But I guess you could say I've been off and on since the 1980s, actually doing shows, either through the other business or through myself, like through Moes Attica, being an active participant in doing shows. I've been to a lot of places far and abroad too, Stephen. I've been to the world's largest comic convention in San Diego. I was actually sent there 1 year. Okay. New York City, Chicago. I've been all over the place. But now, you know, as I told you before, you know, I'm 60 now, so it's nice to kind of travel, and I've got my wife involved, and you know, it's nice to do things more local.
Well, it's cool. And it's good that you got that your wife has gotten involved. That's like a family that stays together, you know.
Wife and children.
Oh, there we go.
to some degree.
668. That's nice. I love that. I love it when everyone, like, when they see that get together to kind of make it kind of work. We're just out of curiosity. You mentioned San Diego Comic-Con. Obviously, that's like the big holy grail. What year would have that been?
I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I believe 2006.
Oh, okay.
Then, yeah.
Okay, it wasn't. Yeah, that's it's not like that's certainly a year when it was like rammed with people, kind of thing.
Well, that year there, that week, increases the population of San Diego. I think 3 or 4 times. The convention center was so packed, they had to cut off ticket sales for certain days. They set up pavilions to try to make extra space. I actually bought Motorola radios specifically for that show because it's just so enormous to be able to, like, it was crazy back then. Yeah.
Oh, it's nuts. Jeez. Well, it must have been quite an experience, especially 2006, man. I'm trying to think what.
Talking about pop culture, though, the San Diego show, you got to remember too that was it's really turned into more of a multimedia event rather than a comic con. People use the word Comic Con, but it's so removed now. Like if you go to the bigger shows and you see there's everything from toys and T-shirts and nothing against that sort of thing. But for my purposes and selling of the older comics, it's great for meeting new people and having new things. But I like the smaller, intense shows that the collectors that are into the collectibles go to.
Oh, absolutely. And I can assume for your business, like, you can't just like rush when someone brings something in. You can't just rush. Oh yeah, you take some time to look at what they got and tell them, oh, this is this and that, right? Like,
the days of paying 10-20 cents for a comic are gone.
Oh yeah.
For the most part, for people now, they have their devices. Everybody's checking prices online and that sort of thing. And you have to be competitive, Stephen, too, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's the thing, though, too, is that there aren't a lot of dealers, though. Number one, that they're in the position to buy like older comics because their customer base may be, people asking for the new Walking Dead or something like that, right? As opposed to, do you have a 1939 issue of such and such? Yeah. And the target audience that I try to do is, just basically by advertising at the shows. I set up at the shows. I have this older stuff. People come and they're either going to be a part of it or appreciate it or interested, or I'll recommend one of my dealer friends that has newer comics that I'm looking for. It's all good.
What would you say are some of the things that you kind of have passed through that you found and sold or collected, or like what are some of like your kind of museum pieces?
Well, I have own many comic books, Stephen, many treasures, some of the world's most expensive comic books today. Like I had an original Batman from 1940 #1 issue years ago.
Okay.
If you have a copy of that right now, I'd be able to have the cottage I always wanted up in the Muskoka. Yes, but no, I've had that. I've had pretty well the whole run of Superman except for #1. For #2 and up, I've never owned a #1. I have had other big golden age or comics from that era. The first Captain Marvel, I own the first Green Lantern. I've owned a lot of these other types of comic books. But a lot of people like to talk about the heroes in the Marvel era, Stan Lee. And although that's a great era, and I still get excited about issues of that, I've been through that cycle many times. I've owned like the Amazing Fantasy 15, which is very expensive comic book, by the way, right now. That's I've owned that several times. Amazing Spider-Man 1, first Fantastic Four issue #1. I've owned those several times. And as a dealer and as a higher end dealer, you have to get these items once in a while to satisfy. I have got some goodies to show you today.
Oh, okay.
I've got some nice, spicy, as you say. Yeah, I mean, of course, I have this wonderful mosaic poster I have to promote, right? That was my buddy Lou that made that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have, first of all, in the background, show you first of all, is I have some nice graded pieces. Now, these are comic books that have been submitted to a professional grading company. I won't use the names, but there's companies out there that they'll encapsulate the comic book. They'll grade it first and check it for restoration, that sort of thing, and they'll put it in archival safe material, encapsulate it. They'll put a grade on it, and then that's it. This one here, everybody knows this one, first of all.
Oh, yes.
That one there is considered the first full appearance of Venom.
Mm-hmm.
That is graded a 9.4, which is near mint condition.
It's fantastic
it's
grading.
It's a controversial comic too, Stephen, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Not really, really controversial. Because this comic here, this is Amazing Spider-Man number 299. Okay, this is the issue that was before this one. Now, why is it controversial? Well, this comic is the actual first appearance of Venom.
Oh.
It's just that this one here was like the full, Venom story, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are starting to, just like with the Incredible Hulk, issue 181 was the first full appearance. A lot of people are recognizing 180 as the actual full appearance. So, there's different opinions on that. And I'm going to show you a couple of comics from the Golden Age era.
Okay.
Got some, a couple of here. This is a few detective comics. Which, this is from the 40s. This one here is from the early 50s. This is from the Golden Age era, Batman. And this one here, this is the first appearance of the Avengers. That's an Avengers number 1.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
You recognize some of the characters.
Yeah,
Thor,
yeah.
Hulk.
And they're facing that's like old school Loki design with his horns and his like green outfit. Yeah.
Yeah. This comic here,
Mhm.
or this picture right here, I'd rather say, is from Detective Comics number 8.
Yep.
Which had a famous cover. It was like a Mr. Chang cover. So the original cover has Mr. Chang
Mhm.
looking over a pot of like stolen gems or something with the light beaming over him. So what we did is we superimposed my face.
Yeah.
Put some of the most rarest comics, not necessarily the most expensive comics, but just to give you an idea. This is Motion Pictures Funnies Weekly, which was the first appearance of the Submariner, which there's only a few copies in existence. Again, the Detective Comics number 3, a very rare copy, a Black Cat. Like, see, this is one of the reasons why we get the censorship, when they have the exploding, melting face cover.
Oh, geez, yeah.
An old, the rare Captain America annual, and the LV Cole cover of Mask Comics number 1. But that's what's that about. So
Thank you so much for your time, Mo. I appreciate you coming on and then showing me all your comics and then talking about the whole experience. It's fantastic. And I probably might even see you at your next convention, because I'm also connected to that pop culture Canada.
Sure. Well, that's Aurora. I'll probably be at the small show that they'll have in Aurora there. You'll see a little bit of a different setup than the Hamilton Comic Con, because I usually bring like just a small high-end setup at the small shows, as opposed to the big shows where I have all different kind of items in that.
Yes, you got your walls and some of the display cases.
Smaller items. Right? Stuff. Yeah.
But regardless, thank you so much for your time, and I'm just gonna throw it back to you, Stephen. Well, thanks, Stephen. And that's all the time we have for this episode of Hammer D20. If you're interested in checking out Waypoint Games, you can go to their website at waypointgames.ca or follow their Facebook page. You can also follow Mo's Instagram and check out what he's collected and what else he's got, and when he's going to go to certain events and conventions at Mo's Attic 2017. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon.